The first thing she said to her husband was, "Don't worry. I won't make your life harder than it already is." Elias Carter had expected tears. He had expected demands. He had expected a woman who would spend every day reminding him that this marriage was nothing but a business deal. Instead, the young woman standing beside him in the tiny wooden church lowered her eyes, folded her hands, and quietly stepped aside to let him walk first. It unsettled him more than anger ever could. Outside, the dusty streets of Willow Creek buzzed with whispers. Whore. Girl. They'll never love each other. He's marrying because he needs help with the ranch. She's marrying because she has nowhere else to go. Every rumor was true. After 2 years of drought, Elias's ranch stood on the edge of ruin. His younger brother needed medicine. The bank wanted payment. The cattle were dying. Marriage to Margaret. Holly came with the one thing he desperately needed, her late father's neighboring land. By joining the properties, Elias could finally reach the only reliable stream in the valley. It wasn't romance. It was survival. Margaret climbed into the wagon beside him. Neither spoke during the long ride home. The prairie stretched endlessly beneath the afternoon sun. Golden grass swayed like waves. The silence between them felt even larger. Finally, Elias cleared his throat. "I should tell you something." She looked toward him. "I don't expect this to be anything more than an agreement." She nodded almost immediately. "I know. I won't pretend to be the husband from those storybooks. Never asked you to." He glanced at her. She wasn't disappointed. She almost looked relieved. "I respect you," he continued. "You'll always have food, a room, and my protection." Margaret smiled softly. "That's more than I've had in years." The words landed heavily. Elias suddenly realized how little he knew about the woman sitting beside him. Everyone knew her father had become bitter before his death. Everyone knew he isolated her from town. No one knew what happened inside that lonely farmhouse. When they reached the Carter Ranch, the workers removed their hats politely. Most expected awkwardness. Instead, Margaret thanked every single ranch hand by name after asking someone to introduce them. She remembered every name before sunset. That evening she cooked supper. Elias expected burnt biscuits. Instead, the smell of roasted beef and fresh bread filled the house. His younger brother, Samuel, stared wide-eyed. "I haven't eaten like this since Mama died." Margaret smiled. "And we'll make sure you never miss another supper." Samuel laughed. It was the first time Elias had heard that sound in months. Something shifted inside him. Only slightly. Just enough to make him uncomfortable. Days settled into routine. Margaret woke before sunrise. She repaired torn curtains. She cleaned abandoned rooms. She planted vegetables beside the porch. She even learned which horse preferred apples over carrots. Yet she never crossed the invisible line Elias had drawn. She knocked before entering his office. She never asked personal questions. She never complained. She never asked him to share his room. Every evening, she wished him good night with the same gentle smile. Every morning she greeted him as if they had always been friends. Weeks passed. The ranch slowly improved. Workers smiled more often. Samuel's health became stronger. The house no longer felt empty. Yet Elias remained distant. Whenever Margaret laughed with the ranch hands, he reminded himself this wasn't love. Whenever he caught himself watching her from across the yard, he buried himself in work. He refused to make promises his heart couldn't keep. One afternoon, a violent storm rolled across the valley. The cattle panicked. Fences collapsed. Lightning struck dangerously close. One frightened horse threw Samuel into the mud. Before Elias could reach him, Margaret was already running. She grabbed the horse's reins with both hands. The terrified animal dragged her several feet across the soaked ground. Still, she refused to let go. Easy? Her voice stayed calm. So easy. The horse slowed. Samuel crawled away safely. Margaret finally released the reins. Her hands bled. Her dress was torn. But the first thing she asked was, "Is Samuel hurt?" Elias stared at her. "You could have been killed." She simply shrugged. "He's family." The word echoed in his mind long after the rain stopped. Family. She had been here barely 6 weeks, yet she already considered them hers. That night Elias couldn't sleep. He remembered every small kindness she'd offered, every quiet sacrifice, every smile she gave, without expecting anything in return. He was beginning to fear something. Not losing the ranch, not losing the land. He was beginning to fear losing the woman he had promised never to love. Then just before dawn, someone pounded on the front door. A soaked messenger stood outside holding a folded letter. Carried the seal of the bank. Elias opened it. His face turned pale. Margaret looked over his shoulder. The ranch wasn't just in debt anymore. Someone had purchased the loan, and whoever now owned it planned to take everything they had. The name at the bottom of the letter made Elias's stomach tighten. Victor Blackwood, the richest cattle baron in 3 counties, a man who never bought debt unless he intended to own the land. Beneath it, Samuel looked between them. What does it mean? Elias folded the paper before his brother could read it. It means we're running out of time. Margaret noticed the strain in his voice. She waited until Samuel had gone outside before asking quietly, "How much?" Elias hesitated. "There isn't enough money in this house to pay half of it. And if you can't, they'll take the ranch." She nodded once, as if accepting bad weather. "Then we'll find another way." He almost laughed. "You don't understand who Blackwood is. And help me understand." Elias looked toward the window. "Years ago he wanted this land. My father refused to sell. He's been waiting ever since." Margaret didn't answer. She simply reached for the letter. "I'd like to meet him." No. His reply came so quickly it surprised even him. "You'll stay away from that man." She studied his face for a long moment. It was the first time he had spoken like a husband instead of a business partner. The realization lingered between them. A few days later, Blackwood arrived anyway. His polished boots looked untouched by dust. His smile never reached his eyes. "I've come to admire my future property." Elias stepped onto the porch. "You've admired enough." Blackwood chuckled. "You've always been stubborn." His eyes shifted toward Margaret. "So this is your famous wife." Margaret greeted him politely. Blackwood tipped his hat. "I knew your father." Her smile faded. "I remember." There was something in her voice Elias couldn't quite understand. Recognition, discomfort, perhaps even fear. Blackwood noticed it too. "I hope married life is treating you kindly." "It is. Good. Because it won't last." He handed Elias another document. "You have 30 days. Then he climbed back into his carriage. Dust swallowed him as he disappeared down the road. That evening, Margaret barely touched her supper. Samuel finally excused himself, leaving the couple alone. "You knew him before today," Elias said. Margaret stared into the fire. "My father borrowed money from him." "Did he hurt your family?" "My father let him." The answer came softly. "My father trusted the wrong man. By the time he realized it, everything was gone except our house." She looked up. "I won't let that happen again." Over the following weeks, Margaret worked harder than anyone on the ranch. She organized the books. She found forgotten supply contracts. She convinced neighboring ranchers to trade instead of demanding cash. She even started making preserves and soap to sell in town. Money slowly began trickling in. Not enough, but enough to keep hope alive. The townspeople noticed. The lonely ranch that had once seemed cursed was beginning to breathe again. One afternoon, Elias found Margaret sitting beneath the old oak tree, carefully sewing Samuel's torn shirt. "You don't have to do everything." She smiled. "I know. Then why do you?" She looked toward the sunset. "Because this place finally feels like home." Those simple words struck deeper than any declaration of love. Home. Not land. Not property. Home. Without thinking. Elias sat beside her. Their shoulders almost touched. Neither moved away. "I owe you an apology," he said. "For what?" "I thought you'd only be here until things improved. And now? I don't remember what this house was like before you." She laughed quietly. "I'll take that as a compliment." He found himself smiling. A real smile. One she returned without hesitation. For the first time since their wedding, silence felt comfortable. Warm. Safe. Just as Elias reached for her hand, hoofbeats thundered toward the ranch. A rider pulled hard on the reins. "Mr. Carter." Everyone rushed outside. The rider looked terrified. "They've started another fire." "What?" "The north pasture." Elias grabbed his rifle. Black smoke already climbed into the evening sky. By the time they reached the pasture, flames were racing across the dry grass. The cattle scattered in every direction. Ranch hands fought desperately with buckets and wet blankets. Margaret joined them without hesitation. Hours later, the fire was finally contained. Half the pasture was gone. Dozens of cattle were missing. One exhausted worker approached Elias. "I found this." He handed over a silver pocket watch. The initials engraved on the back were unmistakable. V. B. Victor. Blackwood. Elias clenched his jaw so tightly it hurt. This wasn't an accident. Margaret looked toward the darkness beyond the burned field. Someone was watching them, and whoever it was had no intention of letting them survive the month. The fire changed everything. No. One slept peacefully after that night. The ranch hands began taking turns standing guard. Samuel carried a rifle. That looked too heavy for his thin shoulders. Margaret left a lantern burning in the front window until sunrise, hoping its warm glow might make the house feel less afraid. Elias blamed himself. Every blackened fence post reminded him that his family had become targets simply because of him. One evening, he found Margaret repairing a saddle by lamplight. "You should get some rest." She smiled without looking up. "You've said that 3 times today, and you ignored me 3 times. She tied off the last stitch. "Someone has to keep this place running while you're trying to save it." He stepped closer. "I don't want you carrying all this." She finally looked at him. "You're not carrying it alone anymore." Those words settled into the quiet between them. Before he realized what he was doing, Elias reached out and brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Margaret froze. So did he. For one heartbeat. Neither of them spoke. Then she whispered, "We're pretending less every day." He didn't deny it. Instead, he admitted the truth he had fought for months. "I don't know when it happened." "What?" "I started looking forward to coming home." Her eyes shimmered in the lantern light. "This is home, Elias." He leaned forward slowly, giving her every chance to step away. She didn't. Their first kiss was gentle. Awkward. Honest. It wasn't born from passion. It was born from trust. When they finally pulled apart, both of them laughed softly, almost embarrassed by how long it had taken. For the first time since their wedding day, neither of them felt trapped, not they felt chosen. The happiness lasted exactly 2 days. Margaret disappeared. Elias returned from checking fences. To find the house strangely quiet, Samuel rushed toward him. She left this. It was a folded note. Elias opened it with trembling hands. I'm sorry. I have to do this alone. Please don't come after me. He was already saddling his horse before he reached the end of the letter. The trail led straight to Blackwood's estate. By the time Elias arrived, Margaret was standing on the wide porch, facing Victor Blackwood alone, hidden behind a line of trees. Elias listened. I'll transfer my father's remaining land, Margaret said. In exchange, you erase every debt connected to the Carter Ranch. Blackwood smiled. I wondered how long it would take. So you'll do it? I'll consider it. You gave your word. I gave you hope. His smile widened. They're not the same thing. Margaret's face fell. You lied. I always intended to. Blackwood stepped closer. Know what I really want. She stiffened. Years ago, I offered to marry you. Your father refused. I was 17 and beautiful. His voice made Elias's blood boil. You should have been mine then. Margaret stepped backward. I belong with my husband. Blackwood's smile vanished. You'll belong to no one if Carter loses that ranch. Elias could listen no longer. He rode straight through the front gate. Blackwood's guards reached for their weapons. Elias leveled his rifle. If any man here touches my wife. No one moved. Margaret turned, tears filling her eyes. Elias. He climbed from his horse and stood beside her. Not in front of her. Beside her, he took her hand. Firmly. Publicly. You should have told me. I didn't want you sacrificing everything for me. He looked into her eyes. You are everything. Blackwood laughed, touching. Then he pulled another paper from his coat. Tomorrow morning, the court signs over your ranch. Elias stared at the document. Unless he could prove Blackwood had obtained the debt through fraud, everything was already lost. Elias barely remembered the ride home. The prairie blurred beneath the pounding hooves. Margaret sat silently beside him, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Neither of them spoke until the ranch came into view. Samuel was waiting on the porch. The moment he saw their faces, he understood. We're out of time, aren't we? Elias nodded. I'm sorry. Samuel shook his head. Don't apologize. This place gave me a family again. That single sentence nearly broke Elias. Late that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Margaret lit a single lamp in the kitchen. She spread old papers across the table. Land records. Receipts. Letters. Anything that might help. Hours passed. The silence was broken only by the crackling fire. Then something slipped from inside one of her father's old journals. A sealed envelope. Her hands froze. She recognized the handwriting immediately. Her father's. She broke the seal. Carefully. Inside was a signed confession. Years earlier, Victor Blackwood had tricked him into signing false contracts after secretly changing the terms of their agreement. Her father admitted everything. He wrote that Blackwood had bribed a county clerk, forged documents, and threatened anyone who questioned him. At the bottom was one final sentence. If anyone finds this, take it to Judge Hollis. He knows the truth I was too ashamed to speak. Margaret's heart raced. She ran upstairs. Elias! He woke instantly. What happened? She handed him the letter. He read every word twice. Hope returned to his eyes for the first time in weeks. If this is enough, It has to be. Before sunrise, they saddled their horses. Blackwood had planned to claim the ranch at noon. The courthouse stood nearly 30 miles away. There was almost no time. They rode through rain, across swollen creeks, over rocky hills. Halfway there, 3 riders appeared behind them, Blackwood's men. "They know," Elias said. "Ride." The chase exploded across the open prairie. Bullets struck the dirt beside. Then Margaret refused to slow down. One rider pulled. Alongside, he reached for her. Reins. Elias turned his horse sharply and slammed into him. Both men crashed into the dust. "Elias!" Margaret screamed. "Keep going." She hesitated. "Go." She forced herself forward. Behind her came fists. Gunshots. Then silence. She didn't dare look back. By the time she reached the courthouse, her horse was shaking with exhaustion. She stumbled inside. Judge Hollis looked up from his desk. "The hearing has already begun." Margaret placed the confession in his hands. "You have to read this." Outside, another horse galloped into town. Elias. Bruised. Bleeding. But alive. He burst through the courtroom doors just as Victor Blackwood smiled confidently before the judge. "I believe this matter is settled." Judge Hollis slowly unfolded the old letter. The room became perfectly still. Blackwood's confident smile began to fade. For the first time in years, he looked afraid.
Judge Hollis read every word in complete silence. No one dared interrupt him. The courtroom felt smaller with every passing second. Victor Blackwood stood perfectly still, but a bead of sweat rolled down the side of his face. When the judge finished, he looked directly at the county clerk. "Bring me the original contracts." The clerk hesitated. Blackwood's voice turned sharp. "Your Honor, this letter proves nothing. It proves enough to ask questions." Within minutes the old records were laid. Across the judge's desk, he examined every signature, every date, every seal. Then he noticed it. One page carried a county stamp that had not existed until 2 years after the document had supposedly been signed. The courtroom erupted into whispers. Judge Hollis looked at Blackwood. "Would you care to explain that?" Blackwood remained silent. The clerk lowered his head. Finally, in a trembling voice, he confessed. Blackwood had paid him to alter records years before. The forged documents had stolen land from desperate families all across the valley. Margaret closed her eyes. Her father had been telling the truth. Judge Hollis struck his gavel. "All claims against the Carter Ranch are dismissed immediately." He turned toward the sheriff. "Victor Blackwood, you are under arrest for fraud, bribery, and forgery." Blackwood lunged toward the door. He never made it past the first step. 2 deputies seized him and dragged him away. As he disappeared, he glared at Elias. "This isn't over," Elias answered calmly. "It already is." For the first time in months, the weight on his shoulders was gone. Outside the courthouse, the rain had stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds, spilling across the dusty street. Margaret stood quietly on the wooden steps. Exhausted. Elias walked toward her. "You saved us." She smiled through tears. "We saved each other." He gently took both of her hands. "I married you because I thought I needed your land." She laughed softly. "And I married you because I thought I had nowhere else to go." He stepped closer. "I was wrong. So was I. I thought this would always be a cold marriage." She brushed away a tear. "What is it now?" He smiled in a way she had never seen before. "Home." He kissed her beneath the warm afternoon sun while the townspeople watched from across the street. No one whispered this time. No one pitied them. They simply smiled. Months passed. The ranch flourished. The stream watered green fields once more, healthy. Cattle filled the pastures. The vegetable garden Margaret had planted stretched far beyond the porch. Samuel grew strong enough to manage his own herd. Laughter became as common in the Carter house as silence once had been, that every traveler who stopped there left with a warm meal and a story about the couple who had rebuilt more than a ranch. They had rebuilt each other. One spring evening, Elias found Margaret standing beneath the old oak tree where they had first admitted the ranch. Felt like home. Wildflowers covered the hillside. The setting sun painted the prairie in shades of gold. She rested one hand gently over her stomach. He noticed immediately. A smile slowly spread across his face. "Is it true?" She nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "We're going to have a baby." For a moment, he couldn't speak. The tough rancher, who had faced drought, fire, debt, and armed men without flinching, suddenly found himself crying. He wrapped his arms around her as carefully as if she were the most precious thing in the world. "You've given me more than I ever deserved." She looked up at him. "You gave me something too. What? A place where I never have to earn love." He kissed her forehead. He never had to. Years later, neighbors would still tell the story of the marriage that everyone believed would fail. They spoke of the rancher who expected nothing more than a quiet agreement. That they spoke of the lonely young woman who arrived carrying little more than kindness and courage. But those who truly knew them always ended the story the same way. The land had brought them together. Hardship had tested them. Love had surprised them. And in the end, the cold marriage that neither of them wanted became the greatest blessing either of them had ever known.